Hi there, this is Colin McGarry with Walking Today. Now today we'll be on Omaha Beach and we'll be looking at incidents that didn't happen on Omaha Beach, which we're supposed to have, and an installation on Omaha Beach which you might not know of. Now Omaha Beach is 4 miles long, covered in golden sand. It's bounded behind it by 100-foot high bluffs, and it can be 500 yards wide at low tide. On each end there are 100-foot high sheer cliffs. Omaha Beach stretches from Angoville in the east, past Saint Laurent in the middle, where the brave statue is, to Veryle at the far end. And the cliffs in the distance is Pointe du Hoc, and Pointe du Hoc is further over, we can't see that. Now this little bay is part of Omaha Beach. You might not think it is. It's Saint-Honoré-de-Perth. Now from the cemetery you can see the church of Waverly at the western end of the beach, and the cemetery is lined up with it. It's also lined up with the church at Saint-Honoré-de-Perth, which is here at the eastern end of the beach. Now you can't see it from the cemetery, but you can check on Google Earth. Now you might have seen a scene that was filmed here in The Longest Day, which didn't happen here, it sort of happened the other end of the beach. And there was another scene that was filmed in The Longest Day, which wasn't filmed here, but was supposed to be here. That didn't happen either. But there's a vital aspect of the Battle of Normandy that did happen here, and you might not be aware of that. In The Longest Day, in one of the first scenes, Michel Louis Hardelay is shown at the window of this house. So Mr. Hardelay, Michel Hardelay, he was actually the owner of the only house that survived along the beachfront, and it was survived because it was made of brick, so the Germans didn't demolish it. But he actually lived, because it was out of bounds, he actually lived in this house in Veryle, in this cul-de-sac. A neighbour of Michel Hardelay was Louis Culiboeuf. He lived in the station, which is where that white car is. Louis Culiboeuf lived here. There was a house here which was the station when there was a tramway, and then the bus stop. He lived here with his family, and so he had a good view down the draw towards the beach. Around 4 in the morning, some bombs were dropped nearby, probably misdropped bombs of the Maisy gun battery bombing. Around 6, Louis Culiboeuf can hear the throbbing of ships' engines. Louis had made a shelter, as the BBC had advised him to do, 1.5 meters deep, with steps going up at each end. He went to the top of the road coming up from the beach. He couldn't see much of the sea, but could see a battleship. He went back and told his wife and children to get into the shelter. Just as they went in, a shell hit the facade of the chateau. That's the back of Mr. Hardelay's house. Early in the morning, a neighbour came past, shouting. The invasion started. So he followed them. They went towards the cliff top. And because WN-70 is over here, they went as far as they could, then there was a barbed wire. There's about 9 of them now. And then a German officer came up in a horse cart, and he had no hat on. His vest wasn't buttoned up, his shirt was billowing out above his waist. He'd been woken by, "Wake up, the Tommies are coming." But he'd heard this many times, so he checked that the order actually came from his captain. Then he got dressed rapidly, and he got to the opening in the barbed wire, and he stopped the cart and he threw up his hands and jumped off the cart, and the horse bolted back to the stable. Cornelius Ryan wrote about Michel Hardelay and the officer. Zanuck morphed the incidents into the scene with Goldfinger, or Gert Frob, jumping off his horse as a shell comes in, and the horse bolts. All this witnessed by Michel Louis at the window, shouting, "Oh, the great German army in retreat." During the naval bombardment, at least 6 buildings were hit. Then at 2 p.m, the church was hit. Some other buildings were damaged by the German artillery trying to take back the village. The station actually disappeared during one of the German counterattacks. There was some American ammunition trucks parked in front of it. They were hit, and the trucks and the building disappeared. Another iconic scene for the longest day was Major Plascat looking out from an observation post. It was sort of filmed at Long Gun Battery. Earlier on, they had shown Plascat playing with his dog in front of the fire control position to show how peaceful it was in Normandy. For the scene where Plascat looks out and sees the ship, they showed the exterior, then the interior was a studio set. Cornelius Ryan had given a questionnaire to veterans for his research. The first question was, where were you at midnight on the 5th? John Steele put that he was hanging on the church of St Mary Église, even though they were still in England. Plascat replied that it was in the lookout post at WM 59, Saint-Honorine-de-Perthes. They used the fire control position at Long because the bunker that had been here had disappeared when they made the film 18 years later. Plascat actually came here to recount his experience in front of a camera.
Hier begann die Invasion. Hier waren meine Bunker, meine Beobachtungs...
An abridged version of what he's saying is that there was the invasion and here was my bunker. I was the first German officer to announce the invasion. Gradually, at 4:30, the fog lifted and I saw 3,000 to 6,000 ships. Trouble is that his men couldn't find him on D-Day, and he was probably in Bayeux. A real eyewitness account was weaved into that scene. Michel Hardelay, in his account, says they were looking out to sea. There was a mist over the sea, which gradually disappeared, revealing the fleet. That was incorporated into the Plascat scene with the mist clearing so we could count 6,000 ships. During the longest day, one scene was filmed here, which was supposed to have happened 5 miles away, but didn't really. Another scene was filmed 8 miles away, representing an action that was supposed to happen here, but didn't. An amazing element of the Battle of Normandy was the logistics. As there were no large ports in the landing zone, which is one of the reasons the area was chosen, 2 ports were built, one at Omaha and one at Arromanches on Gold Beach. But to bring in fuel, they were planning on Pluto, pipeline under the ocean, or pipeline underwater transport of oil. That was a crazy idea of laying pipelines on the seabed from the Isle of Wight to Cherbourg. That's 70 miles. But Cherbourg had to be captured before that could be installed. Taking Cherbourg was planned for D+10. It actually took 3 weeks, and the Germans destroyed the port as much as they could before surrendering. So it wasn't until the 12th of August that the pipeline could be laid. In the meantime, they brought fuel in by tankers and jerry cans. The fuel in tankers was fed into pipes and ducted inland. At Mont near Étreham, there were storage tanks. From here it was carried inland in a pipeline, or it could be transferred into jerry cans. At Port-en-Bessin and Saint-Honorine-de-Perth, large tankers could moor off the coast. They would connect to a pipe held in place by a buoy. This system was called Pluto Minor, and the pipe going to Cherbourg was Pluto Major. The pipe that the tankers connected to was called a tombola. The installation started on the 10th of June and first delivery was on the 17th. I only found 3 photos of the Saint-Honorine-de-Perth installation. There are more photos available for the Port-en-Bessin. At Port-en-Bessin there was the western jetty and the eastern jetty. The western one was for the Americans and the eastern jetty for the British. After the storm of the 19th, which wrecked the Mulberries at Omaha Beach, Port-en-Bessin became more active for landing supplies apart from fuel. From Mont, the pipeline went east towards and past Caen. One branch also went west to meet up with the Pluto Major pipeline. Michelin has published a map of Normandy showing when towns were liberated. It also shows the trajectory of Pluto. The map shows that the pipeline went past the village where I live. I asked someone who lived there during the war if they remembered it. He said yes, and he remembered that it sprung a leak. Whether by accident or design, we don't know. He said that you could fill up a bucket with gasoline by digging a hole in the field. So you see, a few things never happened at Saint-Honorine-de-Perth, and a lot did happen. Now there'll be a video about Pluto Major, so be subscribed or join the mailing list. There's a link in the description to be informed of the future videos.